Hello there, and welcome back to the ClueCon Weekly Studios. You find us here today with a friend from the marketing world called Presh McGovern. How are you doing today, Chris?
Good, David. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Good to be talking to you, and nice to have found out a little bit about you in our pre-show chat, as it were. Where are you joining us from today, Chris?
Yeah, we're actually based in Tampa, Florida, so nice, beautiful day here.
Good. All the days are beautiful in that part of the world, but they can be a little bit hot if you're not careful.
Most of the time, not always. So it gets a little hot in the summer, but it's good right now.
Good. I'm pleased to hear that. I live in Brazil at the moment. I'm dealing with the heat as only a Brit can by sheltering inside and getting the AC cranked right up. Chris, Thank you. It's quite unusual for us to have a marketing dude on ClueCon Weekly because our audience are programming people, but you're a marketing man with a difference. You're steeped in the technology, and I know that from our chat there's a few different angles that we can take. But before we get into the kind of linkage and the the essential linkage between the world of marketing and the sort of day-to-day technology that engineers are used to using. Can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself, please, and how you came to be where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. My background's it is marketing, obviously, but really at the intersection of marketing and IT. So previously, I was with Tech Data Corporation, here in Clearwater, Florida, about 20 minutes away from Tampa. Obviously, one of the largest IT distributors in the world. Started within the marketing organization there because that was what I went to school for initially, what I always envisioned doing, but very quickly grew very passionate about IT. Being at Tech Data, you obviously have to know the product set, know who you're selling to, and who the end customers are. So quickly had to learn. I learned that world and moved up pretty quick at Tech Data. About 2.5 years in, ended up leading the full partner marketing team there, which grew to be about 40 plus individuals. Different functions around marketing strategy, marketing operations, but all for IT organizations. So we worked with IT manufacturers that sold through Tech Data, like Cisco, IBM, HP, Apple, Dell, you can imagine. Work with them, help develop how they're going to really grow their overall partner reach on the IT side, as well as my program specifically was focused on how we can actually enable IT companies to sell more and do better and actually create compelling content and compelling messaging to ultimately who's going to be the end customer and end user of that technology. Did that for a number of years and left back in 2015 to start Presh Marketing Solutions, where I'm currently at. I'm currently the president and CEO here. We're an organization of about 18 people right now, rapidly growing. I think different areas of our business are growing at a pretty rapid pace. I think IT space as a whole and technology as a whole with COVID has seen a pretty big uptick as far as overall. Obviously, a lot of projects are happening very quickly. The need for IT and technology has been exposed now more than ever, and we're seeing the same thing for us. We've got what we do ultimately is we act as a digital marketing agency as well as managing a lot of the marketing and sales systems for IT companies like managed service providers. But what we've really seen happen over the past 6 months is a need for helping organizations have strong CRM marketing sales systems that ultimately, with everyone being remote, it ensures that there's a clear line of sight to what's happening when it's happening, and for any type of documented processes and everything is in place. There's got to be those systems that I think a lot of small organizations and IT companies simply don't have. So we're a big partner of HubSpot. We're a diamond partner with them, and what we've seen is a huge explosion, let's call it, within our HubSpot practice of going in and initially helping set up really HubSpot on the marketing side. But what we're seeing is the need for that being integrated in with the CRM and sales side, as well as the service side on ticketing. And I think this is really where for your audience, David, that this really applies the most, is having an integrated system in place across the organization is so incredibly important now more than ever. I mean, if you've got a team that's remote, that used to be all in one location where you could quickly talk to somebody, go to someone's desk in a very quick manner, handle something in real time. Without those integrated systems now, it is so incredibly difficult to build processes, honestly, and it's exposed that for a lot of companies.
I was going to ask that very question, Chris, that you said that, since the COVID and the forced working from home scenario and all of that kind of thing, people have either found that they don't have the systems in place, or that what systems they did have were kind of not managing to do what they needed. What were those telltales? What gives away the fact that the existing systems or lack of existing systems are found wanting?
Yeah, great question. And honestly, when we bring on new clients, we do a lot of manufacturer programs where we'll work with the manufacturer. They set us up with a number of partners, and we have to really quickly go in and understand where they're at system-wise in a repeatable manner. And one of our first questions we always really ask is, we always talk with the leadership team, is around their CRM, and what are they using to track deals, track opportunities, track any type of company touch point, not just on the sales side, but you look at the full customer life cycle, and everyone now is kind of in a customer service role, whether we like it or not. It's just the reality of the situation. But if we ask that and they don't have a clear defined answer, it's, well, this team uses this and this team uses this, or they're operating out of spreadsheets, or, it's unbelievable that, some of the organizations, as large as they are, don't really have a integrated system across marketing, sales, and operations. And IT even on top of that. So that's kind of the telltale sign of okay, this is an area we've got to go in. They definitely need help here. Is really with the CRM itself, because if you don't have that single customer record, both for a contact as well as company, and you're not able to see the entire company's interaction with them, then this is not going to be in place.
Right. So if somebody comes back and says Salesforce and it's across the whole business, that makes you smile, or HubSpot or whatever it might be. But if they come back and they say, oh, well, or like you said, there's a fragmented thing where different things have grown up organically and they're not linked together.
Exactly. Think of if it's someone in an IT role, if a ticket comes in and you have no background whatsoever of who this is for, and if you're just literally given a ticket and there's nothing there, you have nothing to work with. You immediately have to go and learn so much, and there's so many steps that have to take place before you can actually take any type of action. By having a single CRM in place that you see what they've been marketing wise, what they've been engaging with content wise, what they care about, events they've attended, you can see intent on that angle on the sales side, and really from a even financial transaction standpoint, what your company's actually doing with them, what they have deployed. And now all of a sudden when that ticket comes in, someone in an IT role has so much more background now to be able to really quickly diagnose what the issue is without having to have a lot of interaction right away. I think the thing that a lot of times people don't like, and I almost need to get over in a way, is that the interaction with client or with customers, an interaction that every person in the company is now starting to have. Digital has made the world where everyone's accessible, and when there's a problem, you want to talk with the person that can help you with the problem as quick as you can. And I think even in IT, a lot of times we don't want to have that interaction. We just want to focus on our job and get it done. But the reality is that everything think of online chat. I know myself personally, if I've got a problem and I've got to submit a ticket somewhere, or I've got to get something resolved, I don't want to pick up the phone. That just seems archaic in 2020. I want to go talk to someone over chat and figure it out and get it addressed. And that's like tools like HubSpot are making that very easy to implement for small businesses as well as large enterprise organizations. And the market's becoming more mature, where most CRMs are pretty capable. All the major players are all kind of going that same direction of integrated systems for marketing, sales, and customer services, call it. And that has many different aspects and angles. And every department within the company is now part of customer service.
Right. Now, you said your own business is expanding rapidly. And so how is there a preferred choice when things have got to scale up? In other words, when you start as the single digit number of people in an organization, maybe even one or two people to start with, and you're implementing that kind of system, but you want it there for growth. Is there any sort of criteria that you would especially go looking for in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I think we did good early on was we knew we had to have these type of systems in place to be able to grow, because implementing it when you're much larger is very difficult. Implementing it when you're small and then having that core stack in place to expand with you, if you've made the right choice and you do have the right systems. And again, I keep saying the word integration, but I think we all get it in IT, how incredibly important that is, that if you have siloed systems and siloed data, there's so much that's missed.
Let's just pause for one moment, because I think that's a top takeaway tip you've just given there, Chris, that once you've got a bit bigger, it's a little bit late and it's going to be very, very painful to implement systems across the piece. So the idea is to implement the right things first of all. I think that's a great piece of advice. But I guess the follow-on question from that is, what are the systems? Is it the single kind of HubSpot thing that you're talking about, or is there alternatives when people are starting smaller?
Yeah, I think HubSpot's a great platform, because they do have a version for within sales as well as marketing and customer service for smaller companies that there's even free versions of each that costs obviously free nothing. And that gives you that full stack and be able to implement what we're referring to very early on at no cost. So we typically, for organizations that are smaller, that is our recommendation, because there is the ability to expand and grow with that. You don't need all the bells and whistles. You need kind of the basic, basic CRM, the ability to have a customer record, contact record, ability to have tickets against that, have deals and opportunities against that, and be able to implement marketing and really track in one view what all's happening. And then as you get bigger and as you have different departments and many people involved, and you've got an IT team of 10 people, you got to focus on ticket routing based off of who, customer region and what country they're in or what type of problem it is. You've already got that infrastructure in place, and you've got a lot of that historical data already in place. And that's the key, is how can you make everything relevant and arm your team, your organization's team, with as much information as possible without having to make assumptions or have them go physically ask. Or again, it's digitally, you've got the ability to have everything there, and the sooner you can do it, the better off you're going to be, because you're right, it is very difficult when you're a very, very large company. However, it's not. I think companies take two approaches. One is the super expensive, painful way of going and trying to migrate everything and try to make it all work and force it into this. And you get to absolutely get there. It just takes a lot of time and effort. And others we've seen kind of rip the Band-Aid off and say, hey, we're going to take what we can and migrate what we can and almost start fresh in a way. So.
Right. Okay. Now I can understand with some of the big names that you've mentioned that have got a lot of corporate infrastructure that, there's a total understanding of the need for an across the piece system. But I think it sounds to me, Chris, like you're used to going in and talking to technical people who maybe see the need for a trouble ticketing system. That's a very, very obvious thing to them, but perhaps don't see the need or are less concerned about other parts of it. I wonder if you can talk a bit about how these different parts interwork and why those ones outside the ticketing system are also necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that's a pretty natural thing where we, as humans, we see a problem and we go to fix that one problem. We're focused on that one problem. And what gets missed is, what are all the potential opportunities that, if we look at kind of the big picture and where this fits into everything from a technology stack standpoint. And, again, if I was trying to implement a ticketing system within my company and I went and looked what all was out there, I would go and choose the best ticketing system I could. The reality is that how that fits in with, being able to associate that to all the other data that you have on, who that ticket's for and how you can make that customer experience better by having all this other information be a part of that ticketing system. There's a lot of benefit there, and that's usually what gets missed. So, I mean, I think, we kind of back to the one question of how do we know early on if a company doesn't have the right systems in place or they need a lot of help, back to that core CRM and core, overall high level view of who your customer is, and who that ticket's ultimately for. That needs to be in place. And then it's okay, well, what ticketing system makes sense that works with this, that allows us to get this one piece of data over here for that company and contact record if you're just selling to the consumer space. But it's like that for everything, not even just the ticketing side. It's, whatever touch point you have with your customers, whoever that might be, or whoever, you're talking to and interacting with. I think it's so important now, as everything's becoming digital, as we all are remote, and we have the ability to track all these interactions. It's less of a data privacy issue of, oh no, we're tracking all these things against me, right? It's more, how can we actually make this the best customer service experience possible? And if we have silo data and we have all this information all over the place, we're not going to be able to be as effective as possible. And I think that's the main key is figuring out how all these individual functions fit into that framework. Ticketing being a big part of that, right?
Yeah, you used a great word there, effectiveness, because of course the difference I once heard about between effectiveness and efficiency is doing things right, but effectiveness is doing the right things right.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask a question sort of based off of that. Let's imagine that there's a small to medium engineering company, and they've heard that they need this particular system. We can say HubSpot for now, and they get HubSpot, and they consider that the box checked because they've got HubSpot. Obviously it's got to be used in the right way to have maximum effect. Have you got any kind of war stories or things that you've come across where things, where the system is there, but somehow it's not been implemented or used properly?
That's funny you say that. That's actually one of the biggest ways we can win customers if it's not through a program, and we're not they're not given to us, but we're not automatically working with them through that program structure. Is we'll find companies that have something like Salesforce or HubSpot in place, knowing that they might not have the right staff in place to actually figure out how to use it. These tools are a shell, and that's why Salesforce is as popular as it is, and HubSpot is as popular as it is, because they're not built out of the box to just go implement. You don't go just buy it and turn it on and it just starts working. It really is truly the process and the configuration of how you're using it as a company, and that gets missed so often. If you have Salesforce, yes, you can store a contact record there and fill in the address and phone number and don't really do anything, right? At least you've got a central place to track it, but sure, you can use a spreadsheet and do that. And that's why so many companies do. But understanding your actual business process of how are you talking to them and what are the different steps of, okay, let's take a ticket in a way that they can actually submit that ticket. Are we just going to have a single page someone goes to and they fill out a form and then it goes to us and we assign it? Or do you want to actually give them multiple options? Meaning, for someone who likes talking over chat, do you want to give them a experience that goes through that same model versus someone actually submitting a ticket and you correspond via email, or someone actually calling in who does actually want to call in? So that's really when you go back to how you actually use these tools is so critical, because if you don't have all that mapped out and you don't understand how you're going to interact and interact with your customers as well as and we've seen it time and time again where someone's spent a lot of money on a really nice piece or not really nice software, and just the basic stuff might be missing. It's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you should mention the kind of mode of communication, whether people prefer chat or other people prefer phone calls, because when, as a customer with some kind of issue, you're shoehorned into going down a route route, if you're in the US, that is not your natural thing. So you've got a problem, and you would like to make a phone call, but you're being shoehorned into chat. Then that kind of ups the tension levels a little bit before you even get through to anybody. So giving people that choice and being conscious of that choice, I think, is an interesting factor.
Yeah, people want to communicate how they want to, and I think as a whole, we're seeing trends where no one wants to pick up the phone and actually have a conversation with a person unless it's something that they're really concerned with, and it's like a big problem. And then I need to talk to someone right now as soon as possible. You get an answering, you get a get routed to somebody who's not an actual person. There might be a level of frustration, and you're right, it intensifies things as a part of that. So the ability to create, the interaction with your customers to where they can communicate with you how they want to, that just makes it an overall better customer experience. And I think when it gets down to the root of actually addressing the problem itself, if those things are in place, that's going to make it a lot better interaction overall. So.
Now, one of the things I think will resonate with the ClueCon Weekly audience is often they'll be from a background where the business has started in an engineering-led way, and they've built up a technology stack or a product or solution that they're offering, and they're not yet at that stage where they've got salespeople or marketing people because there's been enough natural pull for whatever it is they've created to kind of get the wheels turning. But eventually people find that they're in that position where they do need some kind of sales or marketing effort. And so have you got any tips for people who are starting from the engineering-led position and know that they should implement some kind of system to make sure that they kind of future-proof it in terms of when they do get sales and marketing capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, again, back to it's easier to build these things when you're much smaller, and to have something implemented with 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and roll that out with a very small group, that's significantly easier than when you've got to roll this out across a large organization of 20, 30, 40, whatever it might be. So the earlier on you have these core systems in place, because again, it is significantly easier to do, you're going to have that framework and those systems already there when you do have someone who is able to come on board and actually start implementing, marketing that actually drives demand, drives leads. And then obviously when you have salespeople in place, I think a lot of times the idea is we'll go get someone in sales and they'll just start selling. Well, it doesn't usually work that way. You typically, if you don't have leads for your sales team, well, then they probably don't have much to follow up on unless they have a book of business. And if you don't have a sales process in place, there's no way to actually scale sales. So I keep saying the word process over and over, but that really that has to be there. And if you don't have a system to implement and track that process against, then from a leadership standpoint, and someone who was an engineer who became the CEO, who's trying to manage a function that they're not familiar with, it becomes very difficult to do that. And you kind of just have to hope you have the right people. And I don't know about other business leaders, but hope is not something I tend to want to bet my whole business on. So you got to have you got to have the process. You got to have the tools, it's your people, process, and tools. And that's the same for a reason.
Yeah. I think what was in the back of my mind is if somebody recognizes that they need a system and so they buy one in, but they don't, they build out, say, a bit cliche, but come back to it. They build out the trouble ticketing system. And then a year down the line, they get somebody in to do some marketing, and that part of the system has not been developed. I guess what I was thinking is there any hints and tips we can give them to kind of build out in terms of a foundation for when the next people come in?
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring to actually building out, a ticketing system internally, you mean like actually like building the tool itself? I mean, it's almost structuring as if it is a CRM. If you think of the kind of core fields that you want to know about every person who's submitting anything, who they are, what is the actual problem, and you think of like categories and consistencies. I mean, when we think of like how we build out databases, we're always looking for what are ways that we can standardize data and group data versus free text for everything. Because then if you have a bunch of free text, you've got nothing usable essentially. But the more consistencies you have, that gives you the ability to group other or group like activity. As well as you grow, and you said like as you bring on someone in a marketing or sales role, then you have the ability to look at who this is for, what were the consistent problems and who were those consistent people. And now you've got something actionable. You've got a relationship right there, and ultimately being able to fit something like that into a larger CRM I mean, you're ultimately, it's a relationship database, right? You're showing here's the tickets and here's who the tickets are for. And now you're just adding in more objects and you're adding in more associations. So I think that's the biggest thing to consider is, what are the consistent things that you can group, as well as, what are the things that you can't group ultimately, and how does all that help fit together?
Great, thank you. Thanks for that, for useful information. You said something earlier that stuck in my mind, and that is, we're all in customer service. Everybody is in customer service these days. Can you expand on that thought a little bit?
Yeah, and when we talk about accessibility in the digital world, everyone is now accessible. I mean, it's whether there's no longer the gatekeeper of the executive who's got a admin who doesn't let someone call or doesn't let someone in the office. I mean, you can go to LinkedIn and just message somebody. You can use email and message somebody, right? There's social media, which has made everything significantly more accessible, and that's just the reality of the world now. So, from an outbound standpoint of what messaging every company is portraying and everyone within the company is saying about that company and the brand of who that company is, and the people within that, the culture of that company is part of that brand. And I think a lot of times that gets missed by people in the organization who just don't think that what they do and their actions represent the organization. The reality is it does now more than ever, because it is so accessible and so transparent. On the other side of when someone has a problem, when you can access everybody, I mean, people go to anyone in the company. They want to talk to the person that can help them the most, the quickest. And now there's a means to do that, whether we like it or not. We see it all the time. We have tons of clients where, people have a problem, like an IT problem, and they'll message like the Instagram or Twitter account saying, I need help. And that will be it literally will just say, I need help. And they expect that account, whoever's running that account, to know who that person is because they're a customer of theirs and know all the stuff that you would tend to need to know. Now, most companies would just have a social media intern or something managing that inbox and wouldn't know what the heck to do, right? But things we'll try to set up is actually tying in all these social media accounts into CRM system that actually creates tickets for us now. If you go to our Facebook account and message us, that actually creates a ticket within our HubSpot system, the same way that if someone actually went to our website and we have live chat on our site, same way if someone messaged that, if they call in and have a problem, if they actually support, we have a ticketing portal too, if someone submits a ticket there. It all is a seamless experience for us, which we go back to process. We have to have consistent ways that we operate and do business and route things and address problems, but it gives our clients and our clients' clients the ability to interact with us how they want. Back to you're saying if you wanted to call someone and you're forced into chat, you'd be a little frustrated. Well, you should be, because that's not how you want to interact with the company you do business with.
Absolutely. And Chris, although you've been making the point, it is a powerful point about this human to human connection, people getting in touch with the person they need to get in touch with. If you don't have some kind of CRM system, you're losing themes and things, aren't you, in terms of what the most frequently asked questions are. And I wanted to move on a little bit to self-service, because of course that's something that people like to build, not to totally avoid human contact. I think everybody realizes that that's got to be part of the picture. But if you're not tracking these things, then you can't get to a knowledge base or a FAQ or a forum or whatever it might be that's going to help people get their problem solved a little bit more quickly. I wonder if you could speak on that angle a bit.
Oh, for sure. Think of any problem, take business aside, IT aside, like human nature. In 2020, if we have a problem, the first thing we do is we go to Google and we try to figure out the answer to that problem. That's just the way our brains are, cell phones and everything now. That's just what we're programmed to do. So the first way of addressing any problem is, let me go figure this out myself. And you start with Google. And, that by nature, that has translated into how companies operate too. We see it within the media buying space. Facebook and Facebook ads have taken off so much, not only because of how effective they are, but because of the self-service platform that they have for people to engage with them. There's no rep that if we went and did a media buy, we ran a bunch of commercials or we bought a billboard, I have to literally get on the phone and talk to a rep and coordinate that whole thing. And it's a painful process, where if I want to go implement a Facebook campaign, we can just log in and have the whole thing launched and ready to go for as little as we want or as much as we want within 20 minutes. And we don't talk to anybody. So that's starting to translate into, obviously other fields and other areas where, the ability to have your customer base engage with you and actually do functions and of how they interact with your company. I mean, I think Domino's kind of pioneered the whole thing with like pizza delivery, where you went on, you bought from Domino's.com. You had a little pizza tracker that showed, it's in step 1 of 4, step 2 of 4, it's on the way. I mean, that was just absolutely mind blowing 10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we've got employees that we were back at the office. We're not remote now, obviously. But I mean, if they would order Uber Eats from a mile down the road just because it was easier, pay $5 and you can see when it's getting delivered. You watch the car pull up as it's getting there, and then go back to self-service. You've got that ability and that platform and tool to interact and actually do a function with your company without ever having to talk to somebody. So you're absolutely right. There's that consistent data you got to have to actually allow that to happen. Back to, you've got your internal processes of how you do business, but you've got processes of how customers interact with you as well. And I think they're successful, or they give multiple ways to do that. And it's, it's got to be defined.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. We're coming towards an end of our time together. It's been an enjoyable chat, and I think you've dropped a few nuggets along the way for our audience to pick up on. What I wanted to ask you is, aside from systems, so I think we've concluded that having the right system is a good thing to do, but just in general, in the world of marketing, what are some of either the biggest mistakes that you see engineering-led companies making, or the other way around, from your experience, what are some of the amazing golden things that engineering companies have done in the world of marketing? One way or the other, or both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing we see is, from a technical standpoint, it's very easy as an engineer or someone who's very technical to get absolutely in the weeds on the technology itself. And that's important, right? If you're talking to other technical people, but, a lot of times that's not the case. And I think, individuals in a technical role having that ability to articulate and clearly say, what the problem is, or what the solution or answer is, without being extremely technical, that's a pretty sought after skill. And we see it with content creation all the time. We'll see videos and articles that it's painful to read, it's painful to watch, right? But it's because it is so in the weeds and technical. On the other side, being too broad and too high level and not saying anything specific and trying to make it fluffy in a way, that's not the right approach either. I mean, the companies that do it very well, they're focused on who their audience is. They're focused on what they care about and speaking to them based off of who they are. So the ability to, marketing wise, do marketing and have content and messaging that speaks to, someone in a C-level role, a CEO or CFO, that isn't super technical, and the ability to talk to someone who's actually the user of the technology in a technical way, because that's what they understand. Those are companies that do marketing very well. And that's just kind of the basic marketing 101 stuff of know your audience. That's really where that comes into play there. And now it's important now more than ever, because there's so much content out there. There's so much stuff out there. Everyone has so many options that if, whoever is looking and looking for, again, going back to how people find answers to problems, they go to search. If they don't get the answer they want from you right away, they're going to go somewhere else, because there's so many options now. So it's important now more than ever.
And what you're saying there is it identifies that even things like an FAQ or a knowledge-based thing becomes a marketing tool, because if people are Googling, how do I fix this, even though they might have a different brand or a different machine or whatever, if they find their way to you, then that's an opening, isn't it?
If they keep asking questions and you're the answer each time, I got a feeling something good's going to happen.
Very positive. Great note to end on. Chris, thank you very much for dropping by the ClueCon Weekly studio and sharing some of your experience. We really appreciate it. And I hope I get to see you down the line at some live event or other in the future. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye now.